Welcome and great to have you join us as we go off script with Sam Monk, Senior Leader of Equippers Church. Enjoy today's podcast.
Hey, welcome to episode 5 of the podcast, Off Script with Sam Monk. We're talking about what's worked, what hasn't, and leadership lessons. And Sam, great to have you here with Off Script with Sam Monk.
It's good to be here again. We're having fun doing this.
We are. Number 5 already, episode 5 already.
Wow.
Lots of things to talk about, lots of things to go through. But today we want to talk about maybe something different. We want to talk about, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
And the answer is going to be the answer to the podcast today. What's the goal of a Christian? If there was one thing you could talk about, what's the goal of every Christian? What would it be?
That's a big question, but I think the goal of every Christian is to become more like Jesus.
Yeah, more like Jesus.
Yeah, that's got to be our goal. And
physically?
I think that's hard for some people.
That's right. I can't grow a beard actually, so it's going to be awkward for me. But
no, just becoming more and more like him every day and being transformed into his image and his likeness.
Yeah. So when we talk about becoming more like Jesus, we're talking about maturity, right? We're talking about that sort of almost that sanctification work, the process of becoming more like him. So we're saved, we're justified by our faith, but also the process of becoming more like him. So how does that where do we start talking about becoming more like Jesus? That's a huge topic.
Yeah, well, Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13, when I was a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. But once I became a man, I put aside those childish things. And the danger as we grow in our faith is we don't put aside childish things. And so we grow in age, but we don't grow in emotional maturity. We don't grow in our understanding. And I think the challenge is for us as believers to always be progressing. In fact, when you stop progressing, that's when Christianity gets boring. It's like when you hit ceilings and you don't keep moving forward. That's where a lot of people can become actually removed or a little bit distant from God, because it's the growth that is the energizing part, but it draws you into a deeper relationship with Him through just through that pursuit.
Because it's a big challenge, because a lot of people, getting bored's a big thing, Like it's a lot of bored people out there that I sometimes see people on social media, and hopefully you're not one of them if you're listening, but it's people that say things like, man, just so bored.
Yeah. Well, I like the statement, boredom's the enemy of greatness.
Right.
And, we get in trouble when we get bored. We're born for an adventure. We're born for mission. And one of the ways that I think you can measure where you're at in your maturity is how engaged you are in mission. And so maturity is not something that you arrive at and then, how many know it only takes one moment of immaturity for you to lose your maturity. It's maturity is as maturity does.
So it's a bit of an evolving process, isn't it? So with maturity, how something that you often mention, and again, you throw out these phrases a lot, and I, over the many years that we've known each other, picked them up. But you talk about really maturity is not so much about age and stage. Like I can say, I'm 45 years old. I've known you for about 25 years, 30 years since high school. But that doesn't mean that I'm mature because I'm 45. I might have a few grey hairs now. Yeah. That's not a maturity thing. That's an age and stage thing. But we don't really refer to maturity as age and stage, do we? Yeah,
well, it comes back to growth, responsibility. I think we live in a society where people can be advanced in years but still have the emotional maturity of a teenager. Right. And so it's how we grow and develop it. In fact, I like what Henry Cloud talks about. You're an adult when you have removed the one-up, one-down relationship. And a lot of people still are living under somebody else or under somebody else's thoughts. They're trying to please somebody. But adulthood is when you can relate to other people on a peer level. Yes, somebody may carry more responsibility in a job and in a position, but it doesn't make them more or less than you, depending from what position you sit.
So you talk about is it like a hierarchy thing, like one up, one down? Like there's a person above me, there's a person below me. I lead that person because they're below me. you know, are we talking hierarchy, or are we talking about?
Well, it's just take parenthood for instance. You know, a lot of people are looking for dad, and they're in their 20s and they're old enough to be a dad themselves. And you know, even in the kingdom, we talk a lot about spiritual sons. You know, oh, they're my spiritual son, and I'm going like, they're 30 years old.
Right.
They're old enough to be dads, and everybody is looking for dad rather than actually becoming a dad. And I think there's a level of maturity, as you know, once you have children, you go, hey,
you got to grow up fast.
Yeah, yeah, you got responsibility for those kids, and so there's a growth that takes place. And I think just, you know, from that side, you're under the guardianship of your parents for a period of time, but at age 16 you have a level of autonomy. As you go beyond that, you know, 18, you got a greater level of autonomy, which means that you've got to take responsibility for your actions, your choices, and the decisions you make.
Yeah,
it's so like, I'm a big kid now.
Yeah, that was that ad, wasn't it? The Huggies ad.
Yeah.
Mummy, wow, I'm a big kid now.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? That's a transition. That's a transition between nappies to underwear.
Yeah,
and
pull-ups. It's
called pull-ups. Yeah, so it's like nappies, but if you have, it's like underwear, but if
like
you have
nappy pants.
Yeah, and if you make a mess, it's still reasonably safe.
Yeah,
and it's a transition where you have to learn to deal with your own mess, and I think adulthood is when you can take responsibility for your own mess. And so that whole thing, you know, I'm a big kid now, is actually I've grown up, and I've got to be responsible for the decisions I make.
So what is it, let me just track back a sec, because what is it to put away childish ways? So kind of make a comment on where you think we're at with that in this day and age. Like, putting away childish ways, like what does it look like?
Well, I think adulthood is taking, as I said, taking responsibility for the decisions you make, taking responsibility for your future, for your growth in God. It's amazing how many people still have unhealthy dependencies. I think the kingdom is hindered in a lot of places is because they're dependent. A lot of people are dependent on a Sunday sermon for their growth, for their development.
To be fed,
and they haven't yet learnt to feed themselves.
Yeah.
It's still, you know, we're having to bottle feed a lot of people, and a lot of people haven't graduated from the milk to the meat, so to speak, of the Word of God. Now milk is something that's gone through the digestive tract of another. Take Betsy the cow and her 5 stomachs. You know, she's had to chew on stuff, and then out pops milk, and then that gets fed to other people. But the meat is something that you have to chew on yourself, and you have to learn to digest. And a lot of people are, you know, even when it comes to listening to other people, they haven't brought themselves to a place where they can just feed on the Word and get revelation for themselves.
Yeah, good thought. And it's sort of almost like we all want to be number 2, right? Because there's kind of no real pressure on the second person, in a sense. It's like when you step out and you're kind of you're the one leading something. Is that why there's maybe a general hesitancy to want to lead in any kind of sphere? Like if it's in your business or in work, or if it's, you know, when you step out, you also, there's an opportunity to kind of get that win as well, though, isn't there?
Yeah.
But if you're always number 2 and you're always thinking, oh no, I just really want to follow somebody else's vision or serve somebody else, but maybe there's a sense of actually I don't really want to be the one where everything rises or falls on my kind of leadership.
Yeah,
scary.
I wonder whether it's a self-protection mechanism, because at least if it goes wrong,
at
least I can go, hey,
it's your fault.
It's not me, rather than owning it yourself. And I think, you know, part of adulthood is owning your own decisions, but I reckon adulthood, in terms of Christian maturity as well, is when you can take responsibility for something that's not your fault.
Wow.
So are we in a position where we can take responsibility for the condition of our city? The way our city or the place we live in may not be our fault, but we're never going to change something unless we actually start taking responsibility for it.
Yeah, that's a great thought, because again, you can see so much of that play out, like people posting stuff, and man, someone needs to do something about that.
The government.
You know, it's the government's fault, or it's my neighbour's fault, or if it's this, it's that. And actually maturity probably suggests that, well, if someone's going to change something, your best place is they need to do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just need to take ownership of what's in front of us. And I like that thought that responsibility is just a response to your ability, which is like, hey, we've all got a capacity, we've all been given gifts, and what are we doing with those gifts to further the mission of Christ? And a lot of people say, well, nobody's recognizing them. But I love the fact that if you got a gift, that gift makes room for you.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to get rid of in our mind the hierarchical thinking that comes in. Yeah, gifts have different responsibilities, but it's not like it's not like we're capped by anyone.
Yeah. And I think that comes into the sort of the one-upsmanship as well. When you tell a good story to someone, my kid da-da-da-da. Oh, well, my kid da-da-da-da. Oh, well, actually, and you can get caught up in this loop of kind of having to feel like for some reason. And maturity probably suggests that you've got an ability to celebrate, what somebody else is doing without feeling like you have to give your own account of something or tell you what you're doing.
Well, by championing another person, you're not missing out yourself.
Yeah.
And I think, the more we can champion one another and celebrate the success in others. In fact, I really believe, God tests you with the success of another. And if you can celebrate that success in another, he goes, okay, I can trust you with it.
Well, there's that thought that you give, and I'm trying to fumble through it in my head, but where you suggest that if you're believing for a victory, but it was somebody else's name attached to it, you probably have better language for it, but you often use that.
It's probably from that journal entry I wrote when I was 18. I said, if the mission was accomplished, if the objective was fulfilled, and I played my part, but got no recognition for it, would I still be happy?
Right, yeah. That's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
But that's a great thought. Talk about that for a second, because I think that's a huge mindset shift for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, it comes back to, and you would have had it, as many have, people coming up and saying, I want to make a difference, I want to make a difference. And over time, you find out it's more about the I than the difference.
Yeah.
And, really, if we're going to make a difference, especially in a kingdom setting, it's the laying down of our life. And too many people don't understand that Christian maturity is the ability to die to self. So we've got a lot of people in church who've been around in church for a long time, and they go to war over preference and style. Mm-hmm. I don't like the style of that music, and different things like that. But the more mature you are as a Christian, it means that you can die to your preference, because let's face it, some music styles aren't our preference. They may not be how we connect, but you can die to your preference because you can see that the Spirit of God is working through that, maybe to reach the next generation. But the problem in a lot of places is we've had Christians who've been around for a while and they're going to war over style. Style of music, style of how we do services.
Sandwiches.
Yeah. and that's where I think we've got some growing to do in the kingdom, because it's not right or wrong. Style's not right or wrong. It's just how people engage with God. And if a lot more people are going to engage with God through a different style, why wouldn't we use that style?
Yeah, true.
Because it's just a method. We're not compromising on the message.
Yeah, and we've got to be flexible in changing the method, and maybe that's another maturity thing, isn't it? You've got to continue to, I guess big picture thinking is whatever it takes to reach more people, whatever it takes to extend the kingdom. We've got to have the maturity enough to, I guess, throw some things away, let some things die. Yeah. For the sake of reaching more people. And
I think the more mature you are, the more you got more clarity on what is actually going to fulfill that mission. Yeah. And that's why, at the start, we can lose our maturity the moment we disengage with mission. It's not like you're capped there. It's like what John Maxwell says. Many people say, I've had 20 years Christian experience. But in reality, what they've had is 1 year of Christian experience 20 times over.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think we're all in danger of just having repeat experiences in the challenges. When was the last time we said, oh, man, I now realize we had we have a moment where we go, aha moment, or an epiphany where it's just our eyes are open to a greater reality of who God is and the way he works.
Yeah, cool. So probably final comment, because I do want to touch on this. You kept it before, touched on it before. You talked about sort of fathers and sons, and you've mentioned a few times about losing sight of mission. Is there a connection between our ability to, and I've heard you say in the past, we don't need more sons, we need more fathers. Is there a connection, and a father, I guess, in the broader context of that as well? But is there a disconnect between, or a correlation between losing sight of mission, and actually, well, who are you helping? Who are you? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And is there a connection between? Because I think a lot of people are bored. I think a lot of people can lose sight of things, but actually, I've certainly found in my life, when I know I can really help people, and when I know that I can hopefully lead people to a place that I've actually been and maybe conquered, I guess we're often talking about leading people into green pasture. Talk about that for a second as we.
Yeah. Well, I think how we grow is through a number of different things, through our circumstances, but I find the answer to our growth is in the serving of others. You grow as a disciple when you choose to reach out and disciple others. I like Philemon 6, where it says, I pray that you be active in sharing your faith so you'll have a full understanding as to what Christ has given you. You can really never have full understanding of what Christ has given you unless you're active in sharing your faith. And it's in the engagement of serving others and the engagement of discipling others that you actually grow in your understanding of who God is. Most adults adult learning is done on a need-to-know basis. For instance, my bathroom door lock busted, and you don't want that not working, because otherwise you're going to have some awkward moments. Awkward moments. So we had to fix the bathroom door lock. But, I didn't know how to do it, but I went on Google, YouTubed it, and now I know how to fix a bathroom door lock.
There we go.
But it's only because I needed to know.
Right.
I wouldn't run one day randomly just go, I wonder how you fix locks.
You're not going to do an adult course on lock fixing.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so on the need-to-know basis. Right. And so if you have a context to put your learning in, you're going to retain a lot more. And the context God grows us and develops us is through mission. And a lot of people, go, well, I'll become more like Jesus and then I'll go on mission. No, that's not how it works. We become more like Jesus as we are on mission.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah. And cool. I think that's enough for today. And great conversation on maturity. And I think there's some themes of that we can continue to talk about. And one thing here, again, at Equippers, and we believe that significant ministry flows from significant relationship. And we hope this has been helpful to you. We want you to, if this has been helpful, you can share it and like it and subscribe on all the different areas that you get your podcast. Otherwise, this has been Off Script with Sam Monk, episode 5. We'll see you next time for episode 6.
Thanks for listening to Off Script with Sam Monk. If you found this podcast helpful, make sure you pass it on. We love your feedback, so drop us a line about what topics you'd like to hear about on Off Script with Sam Monk.